If you are collecting Social Security benefits right now, or you are approaching retirement age and planning to file soon, you need to pay close attention to what has been happening in the United States Senate over the past several months, because the legislative activity surrounding Social Security in 2025 and into 2026 has been more significant than anything retirees have seen in years. Some of these changes are already law. Others are working their way through Congress with genuine momentum, and all of them have direct implications for the amount of money that reaches your bank account every single month. This is not political speculation. These are real bills, real votes, real policy shifts. And I am going to walk you through every single one of them in plain language so that by the time you finish, you will know exactly what has already changed, what is still being debated, and what steps you should be taking right now to protect and maximize the benefits you have spent your entire working life earning. Let us start with something fundamental because it matters and because too many people in Washington talk about Social Security in a way that feels disconnected from the reality of daily life. Social Security is not a government handout. It is not charity. It is not a favor. It is a contract. For decades, working Americans paid into this system with every single paycheck. Hi, I'm Nancy, and welcome back to my channel. The money was taken before they ever saw it. They did not get a choice. They contributed faithfully through good economic times and difficult ones, through recessions and recoveries, through wars and pandemics. And they were promised that when they reached retirement age, that money would be there for them. For millions of seniors today, that promise is the difference between independence and financial hardship. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, using census data without Social Security benefits, approximately 37% of Americans aged 65 and older would fall below the poverty line. With Social Security, that number drops to under 9%. That is not a statistic to gloss over. That is a staggering reality about how essential this program is to the fabric of daily life for older Americans. And yet, year after year, retirees have watched their buying power shrink. They have watched the cost of groceries climb, the cost of medications rise, the cost of housing become increasingly burdensome while their Social Security checks struggled to keep pace. The adjustments they received, what the government calls cost of living adjustments or COLA, were calculated using a formula that many advocates and economists have argued for years simply does not reflect how seniors actually spend their money. Here is the core problem. The formula used by the federal government to calculate COLA is known as the CPI-W, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. It tracks prices based on the spending habits of people who are still working. People who spend their money very differently than retirees do. Working age Americans spend proportionally more on things like transportation, electronics, and entertainment. Retired Americans spend a much greater share of their income on healthcare, prescription drugs, and housing. And healthcare costs, as every senior in this country knows firsthand, have been rising far faster than general inflation for years. So what happens is this. The government calculates the annual COLA using a formula that underweights the categories where seniors spend the most and overweights categories they barely spend on anymore. The result is that the annual increase retirees receive does not actually cover what their lives cost. They fall a little further behind each year. The Senior Citizens League published research in October 2025 showing that this gap compounded over time has cost retirees significant purchasing power over the past 2 decades. For 2026, the official COLA was 2.8%, which translates to approximately $56 per month for the average retired worker, bringing the average monthly benefit to roughly $271. Meanwhile, the Medicare Part B premium increased to $22.90 per month, a 9.7% jump, which consumed a meaningful chunk of that COLA increase before retirees ever saw it in their bank accounts. This is the pattern that has frustrated seniors for years, and it is the pattern that multiple pieces of legislation in the Senate are now attempting to address. The first major legislative development is one that has already become law. And if you are a retired public servant, this one may directly affect you. The Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law on January 5, 2025. This legislation eliminated 2 provisions that had penalized millions of retired public workers for decades. the windfall elimination provision known as WEP, and the government pension offset known as GO. These provisions affected approximately 3 million Americans, retired teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other government employees in many states who had split careers working both in public sector jobs covered by government pensions and in private sector jobs where they paid Social Security taxes. The formulas used to calculate their benefits unfairly reduced what they received. A retired school teacher in Ohio or Texas who also worked part-time jobs for decades, paying Social Security taxes faithfully on that income, found their benefits reduced in ways that bore no connection to the contributions they actually made. The Fairness Act ended this. It is retroactive to January 2024, meaning December 2023 was the last month WF and GO applied. As of March 2026, the Social Security Administration has processed over 3.1 million retroactive payments totaling approximately $17 billion, with an average retroactive payment of about $6,710 per person. However, implementation has not been seamless. A March 2026 report from Government Executive noted that some retirees are still waiting for their full recalculated benefits more than a year after the law was signed. If you believe you are affected and have not yet received your adjustment, contact the Social Security Administration directly. The second major development is a set of bills currently working their way through the Senate that would change the COLA formula itself. The most notable is the Boosting Benefits and COLA for Seniors Act, introduced as Senate Bill 3529 in October 2025. This legislation proposes replacing the CPI-W with the CPI-E, the Consumer Price Index for the elderly. The CPI-E is specifically designed to reflect how older Americans actually spend their money, giving more weight to healthcare costs, prescription drugs, and housing. Research from advocacy organizations suggests that if the CPI-E had been used over the past 2 decades instead of the CPI-W, many retirees would be receiving meaningfully higher monthly payments today. It is important to be clear about the current status of this bill. As of April 2026, the Boosting Benefits and COLA for Seniors Act has been introduced but has not been passed into law. It is a proposal, not yet a reality, but the fact that it has bipartisan attention and that multiple similar bills have been introduced in both chambers, including the broader Social Security Expansion Act Senate Bill 770 introduced in February 2025, signals that the political pressure on this issue has reached a level that Congress is finding increasingly difficult to ignore. Seniors and advocacy groups, including AARP, the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, and grassroots organizations of retired teachers, government workers, and military personnel have been applying consistent pressure. Letters, phone calls, packed town halls, and organized campaigns have steadily changed the political calculus for lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. The third critical dimension is long-term solvency, and this is where the conversation gets harder, but absolutely essential. The Social Security trust funds have been under increasing financial pressure. In February 2026, the Congressional Budget Office released updated projections showing that the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund is projected to be exhausted by 2032, 1 year earlier than previously estimated. The Social Security trustees' own most recent report projected depletion by 2033. These are not the same date, but they are in the same range, and the direction is not encouraging. It is critically important to understand what depletion means and what it does not mean. It does not mean Social Security disappears. Payroll taxes would continue to flow into the system, but under current law, once the trust fund reserves are exhausted, benefits would automatically be reduced to match incoming revenue. The CBO estimates that reduction could be approximately 21 to 28% across the board. For a retiree receiving $2,000 per month, that could mean a reduction of $400 to $560 every single month. For someone living on a fixed income, that is the difference between paying utility bills and not paying them, between affording medication and going without. This is why the solvency conversation matters so much, and it is where some of the fiercest political debates are happening. One of the most discussed proposals is raising the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes. In 2026, the taxable maximum is $18,350. That means a person earning $500,000 a year pays the exact same dollar amount in Social Security payroll taxes as someone earning $184,500. Everything above that cap is exempt. Many advocates and several bills in Congress, including the Social Security Expansion Act, propose applying payroll taxes to earnings above $400,000 or eliminating the cap entirely. Proponents argue this would generate enormous additional revenue and extend the program's solvency for decades without cutting benefits. Others oppose the approach, arguing it would amount to a significant tax increase on high earners. The debate is ongoing, but the fact that this conversation is happening with real urgency represents meaningful progress compared to years of inaction. Now, let us talk about what all of this means for you specifically and practically. If you are already receiving Social Security benefits, the most immediate thing to do is make sure your information with the Social Security Administration is current, create or log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov. That portal gives you access to your earnings record, your benefit estimates, and official communications. If you are not comfortable online, you can call the SSA at 1-800-77-21213, Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning to 7 in the evening Eastern Time, or visit a local field office in person. Review your earnings record carefully and make sure every year of your work history is accurately reflected. Errors are more common than people realize, and a missing year or incorrect income figure can reduce your benefit. If you spot a mistake, request a correction immediately. If you are affected by the WEP or GO elimination under the Social Security Fairness Act and have not yet received your recalculated benefit or retroactive payment, contact the SSA directly. As of early 2026, some cases were still being processed, and bipartisan groups of senators have been pressing the agency to expedite payments and honor the full retroactive period going back to January 2024. If you are approaching retirement and have not yet claimed, understand that the general principle still holds. For every year you delay claiming beyond your full retirement age up to age 70, your monthly benefit increases by approximately 8% per year, which works out to 1% per month. That is a guaranteed inflation-adjusted increase that is extremely difficult to match in any investment market. Whether delaying makes sense depends on your health, your financial needs, your other income sources, and your spouse's situation. But the legislative developments we have discussed, particularly the possibility of a more generous COLA formula in the future, suggest that the baseline benefit itself may become more valuable over time, which is an additional factor to weigh in your claiming strategy. One area that receives far too little attention is the impact on spousal and survivor benefits. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse typically receives the higher of the two benefits the couple was receiving. That means decisions about when and how to claim are not just personal decisions. They are decisions that affect your partner potentially for the rest of their life. Given the changes being discussed and implemented right now, it is more important than ever that couples think through their Social Security strategy together, ideally with guidance from someone who understands both the current rules and the changes that may be coming. Let us also be direct about something. Seniors did not get this far by being passive. The Social Security Fairness Act did not pass because politicians woke up one morning feeling generous. It passed because millions of affected retirees and their advocates organized, applied pressure, and made it politically impossible to ignore the issue any longer. The current momentum behind COLA reform and solvency measures exists for the same reason. Seniors vote in massive numbers across party lines, and when they are united on an issue, they represent an unstoppable political force. Every retiree who wrote a letter, made a phone call, showed up at a town hall, or signed a petition contributed to where things stand today. There is one more dimension that deserves attention. Many seniors are not only worried about their own benefits, they are worried about their children and grandchildren, about whether Social Security will exist for the next generation. The trust fund projections can sound alarming, and they should be taken seriously. But it is also important to understand that Social Security has faced solvency challenges before, most notably in the early 1980s, and Congress acted to shore up the system. The current legislative push, if it results in meaningful reform of the revenue structure, could extend the program's life for decades. That broader promise protecting Social Security, not just for today's retirees, but for future generations, is part of what makes this moment so significant. The bottom line is this: real changes have happened. The WP and GO are gone. Retroactive payments totaling $17 billion have been distributed. The 2026 COLA of 2.8% is in effect. Since multiple bills addressing the COLA formula and long-term solvency are advancing through Congress with more support than similar proposals have had in years, not everything has been resolved. There are battles ahead, but the direction has shifted. The momentum is real, and seniors who stay engaged, stay informed, and continue making their voices heard are the reason it is happening. You worked your entire life for these benefits. You earned them with your labor, your sacrifice, and your decades of faithful contributions. And the effort to protect them and strengthen them is one of the most important efforts of our time. Stay informed. Verify everything through official sources. Subscribe Senior USA Goody for more latest updates.